Hello and welcome to Tooshka Training. We're back in Hitfilm 2 Ultimate and it's the first in our series of backgrounds. These are just simple backgrounds. Some are more advanced backgrounds as well, but this one's quite a very simple one. I used to make VST user interfaces a few years back, and this was a technique that a lot of people used back then, including myself. It's very common, very simple. It's a brushed metal effect. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new composite shot. We'll call this shot container as usual, and as not usual, I've actually spelt it right again. I'm definitely going out to celebrate tonight. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a new plane, which we'll call brushed metal background. We'll leave it white. We'll just create that there like so. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to generate, and we're going to drop our fractal noise on it. Now, in a 2D application, if you've done this before, you would normally drop noise onto the background. But in Hitfilm 2 Ultimate, you need to realize that the noise effect itself is actually animated, and animated is no good for this particular setup that we're building here. So you need to use the fractal noise, and you look at the fractal noise and it doesn't really do what you'd be expecting from a normal noise in a 2D application. So what we do is we bring up the transform controls for the fractal noise, and we're going to bump the scale down to 1, and that gives us our monochrome noise that we used to from a 2D application. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring down a blur. If you've done this before in a 2D application, you would use motion blur. Motion blur in Hitfilm 2 Ultimate is based on the motion of objects and items, so it can't be used. And I've had some troubles with motion blur anyway. I normally fake it using other blurs, to be honest, in Hitfilm 2 Ultimate. So what I'm going to use is the standard blur. Like I say, in a 2D application, you would use motion blur. And a 2D application's motion blur is pretty much Hitfilm 2 Ultimate's angle blur. But I've found the very simple blur on its own to use a little bit less GPU than the angle blur. So I prefer to use that. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bring the radius up to anywhere over 60. Like that. And bring the iterations up to 4. And we're going to change the dimension to just horizontal. So now we're getting blurred like this. You need to make sure the edge is clamped, because otherwise you start to get this gradient kind of thing here, which is what you get from motion blur in a 2D application. So it's slightly better in Hitfilm 2 than it would be in your normal 2D application, because you can clamp to edges and get rid of that rubbish that's normally there. The next thing we're going to go to is we're going to go to color grading. We're going to drag down a vignette like so. We're going to change the first dimension to 2300 and the next dimension to 900. That gives us a nice enough vignette to drop across it. The next thing we want to do is we want to create a new grade. We'll rename this new grade to dirt, and on that grade we're going to pull down another fractal noise like so. We're going to change the grade to soft light like that. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring up the parameters. We're going to change the scale to probably 86 or so, something like that. We'll change the exposure to, say, -3, and the offset to 0.58. And we'll probably pull the opacity down as well on the entire layer up here. Now, you can of course mess with the dirt layer as much as you want and add in all kinds of things, anything you want to, but that's pretty much your standardized brushed metal effect. Another thing that you could do, and a lot of people do on brushed metal as well, is we'll just rename this new gradient that we've created, new grade layer that we've created, to gradient. like this. We'll just turn off the dirt quickly, just so you can see just this. And then we're going to grab a gradient, if we can get it to open. Hands are being a little bit silly. And then we're just going to put that onto soft light as well. It's quite a common effect to actually pop a gradient across the entire thing, just so one corner is slightly darker than the other and it's lit up down here. You get a kind of lighting effect. When I actually set this effect up originally, I set it up with various lights and got it all looking nice and everything, but I wanted to make a very simple version for the tutorial that's just, it's there, it works. That's the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you on the next one.